folks. Welcome to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, Tuesday, November 15th. I'm joined by Honorable Councilmember Willoughby, and we're expecting Councilmember Krikorian. He should be on his way. Okay. Welcome to the committee. We have several items on the agenda, and what I'd like to do is go through the items, call out those that are special. So we do have with us folks for items number 2 we'll call special. One we'll call special just for a short report. 3 special, 4 special, all have cards. 5. We do have a Mr. Wright for number 5, and we're going to continue this item to prom on May 15th, and we'll be in council on May 29th. Mr. Wright, are you here? Okay. All right. Daniel, okay. And item 6, we do have 1 card on item 6. Welcome, Councilman Krikorian. I've been joined by Councilman Krikorian. Thank you, sir. Director's not here today, so I know he's really busy. So that being said, let's get started. Just quick notes in terms of housekeeping. You could tell the acoustics are not the best. And so when you come to the microphone, try to speak into the microphone. Give us your name and address. Some of you have written very eloquent letters, but I'd like for you to keep your eye on the clock. There's 2 minutes at this time for each speaker. So if you're going through your letter and you want to get to the bottom line, the most important point, please do so within those 2 minutes. So give us your name and address, and we'll go from there. And if there's someone that spoke before you, that essentially you find yourself repeating, it's okay to say, I agree with the previous speaker, and add anything new you might want to share with the committee. So that being said, Roberto, you want to start with item number 1?
Sure, council members. Item 1 is a motion by Council Member Wesson. It's instructing planning, CAO, and city attorney to report on the status of the Mills Act property tax relief $1 million cap, as well as mechanisms to address this issue.
Councilman, our directive is to get a report back within 30 days for the planning department, CAO, and city attorney. Is there anything else you'd like to add as one of the authors of this motion?
No, I think it'd be great if we could get that report in 30 days so we could know where we would need to go, if any, for next year's budget cycle, so that we ensure that we have sufficient funding to continue to preserve our history. As you know, tax relief is one of the incentives for homeowners and other structural owners to preserve their buildings, and this is a great incentive that we must keep doing.
Okay, so that'll be a directive in 30 days. Okay. Okay, so that takes us to item number 2.
Item 2, council members, is an appeal by Community with a Conscience. Fred Gaines is the representative. They're basically appealing some corrections that the planning department made as to the T and Q conditions.
Okay, so staff would like to come on up and give us a report. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Blake Lamb with the City Planning Department. The item before you today is an appeal of the Director of Planning's approval for a mixed-use project that has been reduced in scale and size from what was originally approved by City Council on June 3rd, 2009. After the project was approved by the City Council in response to discussions and input from the community as well as from the council office, the applicant made revisions to the approved project in order to propose a reduced site plan than that which was approved by council. The reduced project consisted of reducing the residential unit count from 219 units to 179 units, reducing the ground floor retail space from 35,000 square feet to 33,500 square feet, reducing the building height from a range of between 50 to 85 feet to a range of between 35 to 57 feet, and many other changes that were made to the site plan in order to accommodate the reduced project size. Because of the changes to reduce the project size, the applicant filed a new case with the planning department for a new site plan review and clarification of several Q conditions as well as one T condition. The director of planning approved the requested entitlement as well as the reduced project, and also found that the previously adopted EIR, along with the addendum dated March 2011, was adequate environmental clearance for the project's reduction. The entire case was appealed. Per the municipal code requirements, the site plan review appeal was denied by the Central Area Planning Commission on September 3rd, 2011, and in addition to denying the appeal, the APC found that the previously adopted EIR, along with the addendum, were adequate environmental clearance for the project's reduced size and scope. Planning staff recommends that the City Council deny the appeal to the clarification of the T and Q conditions, find that the previously adopted EIR, along with the previously adopted addendum, complies with CEQA and adequately evaluated the changes to the project and properly concluded that these changes would not cause any new significant environmental impacts. Staff also recommends that the City Council find that since the EIR was certified in June 2008 and the addendum was certified by the APC on September 30th, there have been no new changes to the project that would result in any new environmental impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions for the staff on this one? No? Okay. So, let's go to the appellant first, and then we'll hear from the applicant. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable members. Fred Gaines of Gaines and Stacy on behalf of Community with a Conscience. Community with a Conscience is an organization of leaders of the Orthodox Jewish community and rabbis in the neighborhood. These are people who showed up to support this project when it went through the process. So they support a project. They're promised a higher density project, which they want to have in that neighborhood. They're promised affordable units, live-work units, certain street improvements. That's what's passed by the City Council with their support. Often to the Netherland it goes. There's a litigation, which they're not involved with, and out the other end, without any participation, without any knowledge, without any notice, is a new project, which eliminates some of the affordable, completely eliminates the live work, takes out these mitigations that this group fought with. As far as they're concerned, it was a bait and switch. Come support our project, and then out the other end, some other neighborhood group gets not only cash, but gets these improvements. That's why they're here. They're upset with that. Specifically, they showed up for this project because they supported having more affordable units in the neighborhood. The project you're being asked to approve has less affordable units. They showed up to support the project because there was arrangement for the after-hour use of retail parking for the residences in the area. That's been removed. They showed up to support the project because the ingress and egress was only from Willoughby. They've changed the ingress and egress to allow ingress and egress from two other streets, Brea and Romaine. There was a widening of Romaine to add a lane that was needed. That's been eliminated. They eliminated the live-work units. This zone change for this particular parcel calls specifically for encouraging higher density, including live-work. This neighborhood wants that kind of unit completely eliminated from this in this secret negotiation that was done outside of the public eye and without any participation from our clients. And the addendum to the EIR basically says because it's a smaller project, you're going to have less impacts and you can undo these things. So you can understand why this group is upset. They show up. And the things that they want are then eliminated in this settlement, which they have no participation in. But let me put to you what I think are more important policy issues. I know that you often don't like to get in the middle of a neighborhood dispute. If you may hear from the council office and they may say they support it. There's, I think, two very important policy issues here. One is, we have worked hard, and I say we because in the private sector we've worked on this as well, in creating this new vision for the City of Los Angeles, which includes this higher density, especially in areas like this. We've supported the plans that have come out of our Planning Commission and the City Council that are being put out to include higher density and to include in that affordable units and live-work units and create those kind of communities. And in this neighborhood on La Brea, that's exactly where you want to have this kind of density, including affordable housing. When you turn around because there's a complaint and undo it and chop it off, we're right back to where we were. You know, I think about just the projects I've handled for all these years, and every single one you'd come in and you went to the neighbors, you went to the council office, they cut 10 or 20% of the units out. Just me, I'm probably responsible for several hundred units, maybe 1,000 units didn't get built because I negotiated smaller projects in all the cases for 25 years.
That's on the record.
Well, 1,000 housing units that I would rather have seen there, but you negotiate them out. But to say we're in favor of this density, and then when a neighborhood group shows up to sue, to cave, and say, well, we're going to cut this project back, we're going to take out these exact kinds of items that we need to encourage and show where you have neighborhood support, that's not a policy that you want to do. And I know the developer will say, well, I don't want to, I'm getting sued by one side, I'm getting sued by the other. Well, the answer is, you don't settle the case. You say, this is a good policy. This is a good plan. This was approved by the council. The findings were made. Large numbers in the community did it, and we're not going to back off because what you've done is created a roadmap for undoing this in every single case. In every single case. And one group shows up, the neighborhood council doesn't like it, people in the neighborhood like it, but the neighborhood council doesn't like it. They sue, and now we're going to cut out the affordable, cut out live work, lower the density in this neighborhood, and never achieve the goals that we've come to a consensus finally in the city that we have. The second is, when you go off in secret and settle the case, when my clients left that hearing and thought that they had supported a project where they had these items, and a year later, 10 months later, they find out that there was a lawsuit and they went into a room and they settled it and now these things are gone. That is the lack of transparency that breeds tremendous distrust for this process that we all fight against all the time. And you, again, when you cave into that, that's what you allow. And that's exactly what you allowed in this case. Their planning commission and this committee and the city council said, we want this project, and then off into a room went some parties. And it's all those parties' faults, including the city's. The city didn't say, no, we want this project. We're not going to settle the case, because they have the ability to do that. They said, yeah, let's move it, let's settle it. And at the end, my clients find out that all these things are taken out of the project. So these are very important policy things. Are we going to throw away the density that quickly? Are we going to go off in secret and with the lack of transparency and have these kinds of
Mr. Gaines,
settlements?
let me ask you one question, just for point of clarity. When you refer to your clients, are your clients' role in the original project, you speak of being part of public hearings and understandings and commitments. Are there also monetary and investment commitments as part of that scenario building that was once understood?
I don't understand the question. If you're asking whether my clients are making money,
are these investors connected with money in the original project?
no, my clients are literally community members. They had nothing to do with the project.
Okay.
Steve Zipp is one of the local Jewish community leaders. He's been on the neighborhood council in the past. There's a number of rabbis that were involved in discussions we have had with this developer. And they were urged to come out to support this. They were asked, do you like this? Is this something you'd like for the community? They said yes. And they came out in large numbers to support this. This was a hard project to get through when it first went through the process.
So they supported a project in concept reinforced by entitlements, but they did not play a monetary role in the business end of the concept.
That's correct. They had no role whatsoever in the business end of this. Now, I will tell you, the one thing I do want to say, and my clients asked me to say this, is because an issue was raised at the Planning Commission, and it's raised in the letter that you received today, and it talks about how my clients want money. And let me tell you where this comes from. When this came back and became a public issue again, in other words, they applied for what came out of the settlement, my clients did meet the developers, and they said, look, we don't like this. We need these units in our neighborhood. We need the affordable units. We need the live-work units. We'd like the project as it is. But what we really want you to do is we want you to make sure you have those units. And we're talking about losing 4 affordable units and 8 live-work units. And so they said, if you're not going to put those 12 units back in the project, then come up with those 12 units somewhere else in the community. And a number was thrown out that maybe that's worth 12 units like that is worth $2 million. Now, my clients never asked for a penny for themselves. They didn't even ask for my fees to be reimbursed. But they said, if you want to settle this, put the 12 units back in the project, or come up with 12 units in the neighborhood, or come up with the equivalent so that those units can be put back. And I just want to be clear, because what's been stated to you, what was stated to the Planning Commission, what's been stated in the letter makes it look like my clients are in this to get money out of it. And they felt that this was a very unfair statement. It was a misrepresentation and untrue.
Are you done?
I am done.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gaines. Any questions for Mr. Gaines? We can hear from the applicant now. No questions? All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. And good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Howard Weinberg with Armbruster Goldsmith and Delvac, and I'm here representing Brea Gateway LLC, the applicant for this project. First, let me just thank staff for all the work that they've done in preparing for this, and also let me briefly summarize the main points in the defense letter that we've delivered to you that you have in front of you, all of which address many of the items that Mr. Gaines discussed. In summary, we are here on an appeal from Mr. Gaines, which is seeking to have this committee determine whether the director, by issuing the Q clarifications and the T amendments, abused his discretion doing so. That's the standard for the appeal here. Nothing that's been presented to you or said shows that the director did anything except what was absolutely appropriate in considering the reduced project and making small modifications to the Q conditions and T conditions in the project that now match the smaller reduced project with the way the conditions need to be configured. Also, the other item I want to point out is that most of the appeal that was presented had to do with CEQA issues. The CEQA issues are all moot at this point because the Area Planning Commission reviewed and considered the addendum to the EIR. NOD was filed, 30 days have passed, and the lawsuit's been filed, and so the CEQA documents are deemed adequate clearance. So really what remains now is the questions that Mr. Gaines presented to you, which are these policy ideas of why they, Mr. Zip and his other clients would like to see my client build a larger project. The reduced project that was agreed on as a result of settling a CEQA lawsuit that was filed originally after 2.5 years ago when the city approved this project, a CEQA lawsuit was filed. We litigated that almost all the way to the hearing, ultimately settled it, and agreed to make a reduced project, which took 40 units out of the project, reduced the height, changed the massing to bring it away from the adjacent residential, and resulted in a much more amenable project to the neighborhood. And that's what we then went back to the director and said, this project is essentially what was approved previously. It's slightly smaller and it's slightly more condensed, and we've changed some of the driveways, and now we need to just adjust some Q conditions and T conditions. And that's what the director did. That was then appealed, and the director did not abuse his discretion in doing any of that stuff. Just quickly addressing the two policy issues that Mr. Gaines suggested. One is that his clients have been in support generally of more dense development in the area, and that Mr. Gaines would like us to have fought a lawsuit all the way to the conclusion and not have somehow capitulated. But we find that having agreed with the community on a smaller project that everybody could agree to is a much more efficient and an appropriate resolution. And we are now 2.5 years after the original project was originally approved, and we're ready to get going with the project. And we certainly wouldn't want to spend more time litigating the CEQA issues. The second issue about the secret settlement and that somehow his clients were unaware of it, it is true that we reached an agreement with the people that we were in a CEQA lawsuit with for a reduced project. But once that reduced project was then recrafted, we went back with a new site plan and new elevations to the city. We determined what queue conditions need to be corrected. We presented that to the director. He considered it. He approved it. That was notified to the community, including Mr. Gaines and his clients. Everybody had an opportunity to consider it. They filed their appeal, and we find ourselves here today.
So just, again, point of clarity, the Mr. Gaines' clients, when that change occurred from a bigger project to a smaller project, when that occurred, his clients were not part of that discussion?
No, when the original project was approved 2.5 years ago, two different groups in the neighborhood filed a CEQA petition challenging the project. That litigation, Lucille Saunders, who I believe is here today, and Bill Christopher were the plaintiffs in that lawsuit. While we were litigating that, we were also negotiating a settlement with them, and ultimately we agreed that they would terminate the CEQA lawsuit, and we would take the project from 219 units down to 179 units, take a floor or two off most of the building, push an additional floor of parking underground, and make the project less massive and more amenable to their tastes, and still in a configuration that worked for us. As a result, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
As a result of, we signed a settlement agreement with them, and that settlement agreement said, you, the developer, now must go back to the city and seek approval for this smaller, more reduced project. We then prepared changes to the site plan and to the Q conditions and T conditions, went to the director and said, will you please approve these changes? Here's an addendum to the EIR showing there's no additional CEQA impacts, and he did.
And I understand what's in front of us are T and Q conditions. I know that's what's in front of us. But given the intent of the original project to factor in affordability, is there any affordability units in the...
Yes. When the project was originally approved 2.5 years ago, at the city council hearing, one of the city council members asked the applicant, will you agree to include affordable units in this project? There was no nexus, it wasn't no development agreement, so it wasn't part of the project that we are seeking approval for. The applicant said, yes, we will. They agreed on a voluntary condition to include 10% of the units that would be built to be affordable. That became Q Condition 3. Q Condition 3 still exists. We're still complying with it. So now the original project was 219 units. Now it's 179. So 10% of the total units, which originally were 22, 10% of 220, are now 18, 10% of 179 is still there. This project will have 18 affordable units. 4 affordable units theoretically have been reduced from the whole project as originally approved. But in the larger context of the city approvals, a developer is never obligated to build to the maximum of what a project approved is. It just so happens that we agreed to reduce the scale of this project in connection with a group from the neighborhood.
So the affordability factor remains consistent in proportion to the size of the new project?
Exactly.
Okay.
And is consistent with the requirements in the Q condition that says however many units are constructed, 10% shall be affordable.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant?
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right. So took care of the appellant and the applicant. Let's go through the cards. And again, keep an eye on the clock. We have Lucille Saunders, Howard Weinberg, and Jeff Jacoberger. Good afternoon, sir. Ma'am. Hi.
Hello. Lucille Saunders with the Brea Willoughby Coalition. We were part of this from the beginning, and we are very proud of what we have achieved here, from an 85-foot mast to a reduced size, scale, and more in character with our Q1XL 30 feet height limits. I happen to live 4 houses from this project. We worked long and hard with the developers, the council office, and the planners, and we are proud to support the new project. There was no secrecy. The litigation, by how Mr. Weinberg explained it, was done by a settlement process, which is purely within the legal realms. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, Howard Weinberg. Howard Weinberg, are you here? Yes. Oh.
I've already spoken.
You already spoke. Oh, that's
I
right.
just want to mention one thing that I had submitted for your consideration, supplemental findings for the project, which I believe all of you have in front of you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Jacobberger and then Bill Christopher. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, council members. My name is Jeff Jacobberger. I'm the vice chair of the Mid-City West Community Council, where this project is located. We have long been on record as supporting this project. We supported the initial larger project several years ago. I think it's important to move this project forward. This site is a long vacant lot. We need to really bring more life to La Brea Avenue, which is an important street in our neighborhood. And one aspect, too, is there's a homeless feeding operation about a block to the northeast of this, and there's a park about 2 blocks to the west. And I think it's important to get some sort of positive activity at this location to really improve our neighborhood. You know, I would just add, I actually do agree. I mean, I think this is an example of why CEQA is a broken process. People bring a lawsuit under CEQA, you know, claiming that they want greater transparency to return it to the public process, and what really does happen is you have a private negotiation between the litigant and the applicant, from which everyone else in the community is excluded. And I think there are a lot of, you know, anger and upset in our community because people feel like they get, when a CEQA lawsuit is excluded, the public very much gets excluded, or when a CEQA lawsuit is filed, the public at large really gets excluded, and it becomes a very small room of people discussing the project. And that's not good public policy. I don't think that's a reason to grant this appeal, but I think it is reason why our elected officials should support CEQA reform, so that it's not just one side of the debate that gets a seat at the table. Thank you.
So I just want to make sure, what was your bottom line? I was trying to understand.
My bottom line is I want you to deny the appeal and approve the project and let it move forward.
Okay,
but I think it is an example of why CEQA goes awry and CEQA reform is needed.
Got to get our state officials on that one. Thank you. That's state law, right? Okay, Mr. Christopher Theodore M. Snyder, and then Alexander Friedman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Bill Christopher. I'm here this afternoon on behalf of the Melrose Neighborhood Association. We were one of the litigants in the CEQA litigation that occurred on this particular project. Along with Lucille, I've been following this project or working on the project on and off for the last 6 years, essentially. And while I usually have great respect for Mr. Gaines and the work that he does, in this particular case, he has joined the circus about 6 months ago, as opposed to the early part of the activities. And some of what he described to you is not quite true. The project that came before council was approved by the city council on a consent vote with no affordable housing, none. And it was supported in that situation by the appellants today. The affordable housing was added when the action of the council was reopened through some parliamentary maneuvering at the 11th and a half hour. The 8 live-work units that Mr. Gaines is so intent upon reintroducing were added only at the Planning Commission by Commissioner Wu as a design element that he wanted into the project. The project supported by the appellants prior to that did not have those live-work units. Thank you.
So we are hearing from a former commissioner referring to a commissioner who was a councilman. That's pretty good. Okay. Our next speaker, Theodore Snyder, and Alexander Friedman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Ted Snyder. I'm one of the members or partners with the La Brea Gateway Development. And, just to comment that we started this process in 2005 in getting our approvals. And through 6 hearings and several iterations later, we got our approval for the project in June of 2009, and we're hoping to move this project forward soon. I would say that Blake and Howard did a great job, so I won't repeat what they said, but I wanted to make one key point, is that the nature of this project has not really changed whatsoever. We still have a specialty grocer, which we have Sprouts Grocery is signed for a lease on the ground floor with apartments above. So it's a transit-oriented project, which I think the La Brea corridor needs, and this will be a nice addition to the community and provide a great deal of convenience to the community as well. So as it relates to the nature of this, moving from the 219 down to 179, an 18% reduction, yes, was in our case a very painful reduction, but we felt it was important to get obviously the community support. So hopefully you'll move forward with this, because I think it is really important at this point in time to move forward, particularly given the economic conditions we have right now. This means hundreds of construction jobs. Sprouts Grocery is committed to 80 new long-term jobs. We're going to be demolishing some fairly dilapidated buildings, taking out excess power poles along Willoughby, improving the landscape along that corridor. We just think it's now a time to move this forward. It's been long enough. We've been working on this since 2005. Appreciate your support.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your intestinal fortitude in the process. Alexander Friedman.
Yes, good afternoon, Council. My name is Alexander Friedman, a Hollywood resident, and by the way, I totally agree with the previous speaker. First and foremost, I'm a strong supporter of the La Brea Gateway project, and I applaud the Martin Group or the La Brea Gateway LLC, the developers, for creating such a wonderful idea. As an advocate for sustainability, I envision the La Brea Gateway to be an important milestone of getting La Brea Avenue out of the blight. It will improve the quality of life in the neighborhood. It will also create jobs, which are so much needed in today's economy. It will provide much-needed housing and will significantly revitalize the area. What I'm disappointed with is with the absurd oppositions from the local homeowners. Those groups, including Community with a Conscience and others, with all due respect, are just wasting everybody's time and money by filing lawsuits to block much-needed projects. The local neighborhood's actions are selfish. The only thing they seem to care about is about their backyard, while disregarding everything else around. The reality is the project will be beneficial for all, including the local homeowners. What I really don't understand is how can a person with any common sense would be against a project that would improve and revitalize the area. And as most of you know, this portion of La Brea Avenue has been neglected for decades, with old, ugly, concrete box buildings, filthy sidewalks, and extremely unpleasant environment. It is time for a change. I am confident that the City Council will deny the senseless appeal and that finally the La Brea Gateway project, after years of delay, will commence and construction will start shortly. I also hope that the City of LA would go back to the approving of the original plan, which includes a taller 7-story complex. The taller structure would be much more practical to meet our rising population demands and to catch up with the overall trend of reversing the American suburbia. We need to create density and ensure our sustainability so that we're all prepared for the fast-growing urban trend. We need to start thinking about the future to build taller buildings, increase the density, and revitalize our city. So once again, I'm looking forward to the city denying the appeal and for the La Brea Gateway project to start construction immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Right under the wire. Our last speaker is Christopher Coons. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman Reyes, members of the committee. Christopher Kuntz on behalf of Council District 5, Councilman Paul Koretz, asking that you deny this appeal and allow this project, which is now 5 years in the making, to go forward. I just wanted to make a couple points. There's been a lot of references to that lawsuit, and this was a project that was actually approved under the previous councilman. But just so you know what that lawsuit was about, there is a low-rise community south of Willoughby, a street in our district, that had severe problems with this project as originally proposed. This project's immediately north of Willoughby. It was going to be tall, it was going to cast shadows, and it was going to dump traffic onto that small street. As that CEQA process and lawsuit went forward, my boss was elected, settlement discussions occurred, and ultimately we ended up with a better project. I think that there is no basis to the appeal that's before you, or this idea that the project is too small, because in reality there has been no loss of units, because the original project was a giant upzoning from an industrial zone to a mixed-use zone. So we went from 0 units to now 180 roughly units. The percentage of affordable has not changed. The reference to the live-work units, those were all market rate units, and at the time when this project was first going through, 2005, that was all the rage. We had to build live-work units. We were all going to live in brand new live-work condos and live and work out of our home and never go anywhere. And the market changed dramatically. The housing market changed dramatically. There's no evidence that even if those units were still approved, that the developer would have any intention of building those units or that there's demand for them. So we think that actually what we've done is we've solved this size issue along Willoughby. We have a project that we can all be proud of. We've preserved the same ratio of affordability, and we have the opportunity to build a good project and put a lot of people to work.
So how can you not go anywhere in Los Angeles? I'm just kidding. So, I don't have any questions. What just strikes me is that you have differing groups that agree with one project, now you're in another project, and I'm just assuming that all of those issues that were handled already by the council office.
Right. I mean, every council member wants to make everyone happy, but that's pretty much impossible. We think that this project will serve the community well, that we've made most people happy. I understand that there are some who wish the project was larger, but we'd have a whole different group of people in here opposed to it if it was that larger project. So we think we've struck the right balance, and that this is a project that over time we'll be very proud of.
So your formal recommendation is to?
Deny the appeal and allow this project to move forward.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues on this one? Motion?
Move to deny the appeal.
Okay, so I'll second that. Okay, so that'll be unanimous action of committee to deny the appeal and move this project forward. Any other technical language I should put in there, Mr. Sealy?
Maybe you want to indicate that by denying it, you are also sustaining the action or the decision of the Director of Planning in approving the Q&T clarifications.
Sounds good. Okay. So that'll be the action of this committee on item number 2. Item number 3. And I think you can take your boards now, so. Sir?
Item 3, council members, is an appeal by Judith Deutsch. She's a member of the Hilltop neighborhood, and they're appealing the decision of the West LA APC, which overturned the zoning administrator's approval of a variance. It's a height variance in CD 11.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Switching to the City Planning Department. This variance application is to allow deviation of Q condition, which was established in 1989. The subject location is improved with a 21-unit condominium project, and originally constructed in 1985, when height was limited up to maximum 45 feet. In 1989, ordinance was adopted with a Q condition that limits the building height to a maximum height of 33 feet. The condo owner in unit number 303 of this, the existing building on the subject property applied for building permit in 2004 to build a loft in his unit 303.
And just for the sake of clarity, this is one unit within a building of condominium units that is being focused upon. It's one unit of, how many units are in this building?
There are 21 units.
21
Actually, the building itself is a 4-story building. Ground floor is for the parking, and 21 units are 7 units on each floor.
So the focus of this issue is one unit with
One unit on the top floor,
Okay.
the third story.
So we'll be clear about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
This loft will result in a cumulative height of 49 feet. This building became non-conforming in terms of a building height because originally it was built in 1985 when building was allowed to be built up to 45 feet. So by having Q condition, which was adopted in 1985, this building the addition is not permitted that is higher than 33 feet according to Q condition. Now, the building permit was issued in 2004 in error because the city planning department staff unfortunately signed off a Q condition by mistake. So building and safety issued an order to comply and intend to revoke the permit in year 2009. This application is to remedy the intent to revoke the building permit in order to comply for the subject loft. Originally, this application was denied by the zoning administrator, and the property owner of the unit number 303 appealed ZA decision to West LA Area Planning Commission. Area Planning Commission overturned the ZA decision in denying that application and approved this variance. The ZA findings you may have reviewed included in your transmitter. Basically, ZA couldn't approve this application because, as you know, variance application, you have to come up with 5 very tough findings to make. Special circumstances and all the other 4 findings could not be made, so application was denied. West LA APC approved this case based on the applicant's the good faith effort to build this loft based on the issued building permit in 2004 and also financial hardship. I think it's up to this committee today to make a recommendation to the full council whether or not you're going to go with the ZA denial or West LA APC determination with the adopted findings, which is included in your transmitter. 2 facts I just want to make clear to your attention is that on the building permit, when applicants submitted a building permit, they included a plot plan with the building permit application. On the plot plan, they had a notation, the loft not higher than existing parapet. This loft is higher than existing roof parapet. And also, according to intent to revoke the permit, building and safety might with that, city has a right to revoke the permit if the permit was discovered to have been issued in error. So I'll leave it up to this committee. If you have any further questions, I'll be available for your questions.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the staff? Okay. So let's go with the appellant. My understanding the appeal is made by Judith S. Tooch?
Actually, it's not just me.
Okay. Okay, who are the appellants? Because that's what shows up in our records.
The appellants also include Donna Ekstrom, who is Glenn's wife, and Adriana Strawberg, who couldn't be here. She's a teacher. She could not get a substitute.
Who's on record? Mr. Sim.
Councilman, right, I think the confusion is that the other people are denoted under brackets, so you're listed as the main appellant.
So you have Donna Istrom and Judith as appellants?
Yeah, they're there.
Okay. So who's going to speak first? Good afternoon, sir. Please give us your name and address.
Oops. There you go.
Yes. Can you get it? Okay, please.
My name is Glenn Eggstrom, and my wife and I have lived on Centinela Avenue at 3440 for over 60 years. During that time, we've watched with increasing amounts of difficulty what is happening along that Centinela corridor. One of the things that is very clear is that there are daily increases in traffic on Centinela. We have noted that there are a number of buildings that have come up since the ordinance was put into effect, and that these buildings are increasing the density of population, they are increasing the density of the traffic, and they're creating a situation that is becoming more and more intolerable. Now, at this present time, it's my belief that the majority of the buildings that have been put up are within the limits of the 33 feet. This particular building is 45, so it's already out of compliance with, even though it was grandfathered in. But to put something additional on top of that, it seems to me is not fair, not reasonable, and it is increasing difficulty on the neighborhood and the people who have to look over the top of this thing, and it is in violation of the 5 points that were to have been met before this construction went forward. We're here to identify a community issue and to support the original work that Sue Chang did when she found that it needed to meet 5 criteria, that it met none of those 5 criteria. This in turn was later put into a situation where in spite of the fact that we believe she was correct in her initial recording, that the program that came through ultimately took this thing away. They took the logic away from her findings. They took the law away from her findings. And we're in a situation now where we're seeing more and more offers to come in and build buildings on our property. And that is just not going to be a reasonable thing to happen in that particular neighborhood. The Planning Commission, in their ruling, also indicated that this variance would open the door and the Commissioner would not be able to prevent similar occurrences in the future. What that could mean is that if this loft is permitted, virtually every flat-roofed building along Centinela Avenue could add another story. That in turn would increase the amount of density of the population in that area and would put us into a more and more uncomfortable situation. Now, for clarification, these 2 photos show in this case, this shows the height of the loft above the roof, the standing part of the roof. It also shows that the so-called parapet that is mentioned, in fact, does not. I'm sorry. The parapet does not prevent people. You can see this from the street. You can see it from up and down the street, and you can especially see it from the homes that live behind this particular building.
So let me ask you this question. You have a person standing there with their hand up against the wall.
Yes, that's a female.
Okay, but what is she pointing to? Is that the height?
She's holding her hand up as a size representation. In other words, I, for example, can reach 8 feet. I don't know exactly how high.
Is that the 4 feet that goes over the height limit?
No. This just demonstrates that this building is more than just a few feet tall.
Okay.
It's not 4 feet tall.
I understand. That's okay. All right. I won't complicate things more. Go ahead.
The next thing that involves the second picture showing the loft at night. In addition to building the loft to a height that was not, in our opinion, reasonable, they added a domed light that can be seen from the whole hillside, and in spite of their agreement to put a shade over this domed light, they have not. And that light is on more often than it's off in the evenings. Now, we can understand that, this is in addition to this particular family's property. The thing that happened, however, is that in order to get their way, they have gotten involved in what have resulted in what we call neighborhood squabbles or whatever. And I don't want to address those things. The thing that I want to address at this point is that we have the laws. The Chappendonks were aware of those laws at the time they started this thing and put in for a variance.
Okay.
And over time, this thing has gotten more and more review, and we felt that the review that had been done by Sue Chang was in fact going to be the way this project was going to end.
Okay.
From the time that roof was breached, several things came into view that we had not, in fact, been aware of before. One is what it does to the integrity of the building during an earthquake. And that domed light, if that building vibrates because it's hollow underneath, it could likely fly off, and brittle pieces of that could go in all directions. We also have a situation where the light itself, even if they flatten it, incidentally, this light increases the height of the loft even further than before. And if even if that light is covered, it still doesn't bring the loft into compliance with the existing rules and regulations.
I need you to conclude, because I think we got your point. But can you finish your presentation?
Just one more thing, and that is that despite the efforts by the homeowners, their views have largely been ignored, and the efforts to discredit them have gone far beyond that which reasonable people should use.
Thank you, sir. So you are speaking for the appellants, but there are other cards here as well. And if you have anything else to add that is different, we would appreciate to hear your opinion. So we do have with us, I believe these are from the same group. It's we have Victor and Elsa Deutsch. I'm sorry. You'd like to speak? I'm sorry? Well, you each have 2 minutes. So I'd like to call you up. Then you have Judy Deutsch, and then you have Donna Ekstrom, and we have Glenn Ekstrom. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, thank you.
Do you mind putting the microphone closer to you?
My name is Victor Deutsch, and I'm trustee of a trust that owns unit number 307 at 3544 Centinela.
With your hand, you can bring the microphone down if you like. There you go.
Okay. I want to discuss one of the criteria that is required for a height variance. The criteria is special circumstances. Topography and location were never an issue with this loft, which was added to an existing structure. There are no special circumstances related to the location or surroundings that do not also apply to all other properties in this vicinity. Actually, the reverse is true. The variance established favoritism for one household at the expense of not only the households in the building, but also households in the hillside neighborhood, who now have their views interrupted. Incredibly, the Planning Commission instead claimed that because various rooftop structures, such as chimneys, stairwells, and elevator shafts, that by law cannot be counted toward the height of a building, already exceeded the 45-foot height, and that's why they say that they can go higher than 45 feet. The addition of the loft was inconsequential. This is contrary to the building department's own regulations regarding the determination of the zoning height of a building or structure, a copy of which is included in our appeal. As such, the Planning Commission clearly erred in stating the special circumstances criteria was met. And for this reason, we feel that the variance should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Lisa Deutsch, did you like to speak? Okay. Then we have Julie Deutsch. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi. Okay. From the moment the roof was breached at 3544 Centinela, and I'm in 3544 Centinela 307, so I have a view of it from my front rooms. This loft has been a contentious issue for our community. Despite two 2004 emergency homeowner meetings, one of which was recorded, and you do have a copy of that recording, and I think you also have a transcript of what was said, numerous letters of complaints about misinformation and procedural irregularities and safety concerns, the Champendonks would have you believe that no one ever initially complained about the loft, and that they have obtained all the proper permits in a timely fashion. These self-serving statements should call into question anything else the Champendonks claim about the construction of the loft. Having neither the law nor the facts on their side, the Champendonks have instead put their efforts into disparaging and discrediting the duly elected Centinela Crest Homeowner Association board members who were brought on to deal with the alarming loft issues. They have gone to great lengths to turn neighbor against neighbor and persuade city council officials that this is nothing more than a so-called contentious neighbor dispute. As you can see by the many people attending today, even in the middle of the workday, this is indeed a community issue. When we met with Councilman Rosendahl, we had a dozen attendees after hours.
Would you mind asking the people that are in support of a position to stand?
No, would you please stand? Those of us who are supporting it?
Okay, thank you.
We are here today because in order to receive a variance, the Champendonks had to fulfill 5 distinct criteria. In her thorough 14-page decision, Zoning Administrator Chu Chang found that they did not meet a single criteria. The West LA Planning Commission overturned Ms. Chang's denial of the variance on the most specious of grounds. One commissioner admitted that although Ms. Chang followed the law in coming to her conclusions, he did not agree with the law, and thus she was overturned. The Planning Commission ruling now puts Ms. Chang in the supremely awkward position of having to argue against her own well-researched findings. As you can see, we've got some pictures of the loft here. Adriana, it was one of the board members with me who were tasked by our homeowners to follow this through. We still are. It's 7 years now. And this picture here is of the loft at night. And, of course, the variance, the ordinance has said there's two things on that ordinance in particular besides the 45 feet. 33 feet, rather. That is that all light must be directed into the building. Well, this is obviously not doing that. And the other thing was that it cannot be seen by any of the residences within the building, nor can it be seen from the outside, and of course, it's seen all over.
Okay.
So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. I'll have Donna Ekstrom, and I believe you heard from Glenn already. Glenn Ekstrom? Okay. Ms. Donna Ekstrom?
By the way, there were two people who couldn't be here today, and I represent, I'm also representing Unit 306, 307, 207, and 205.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Those of us who attended the hearing was...
Would you give us your name, please?
Give
us your name.
Is this better?
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Donna Ekstrom, and I live on the hill on Centinela. Those of us who attended the hearing with the West LA Planning Commission were truly shocked and deeply disappointed in the unprofessional manner in which that hearing was conducted. One of the commissioners announced to us that we were wasting his time and proceeded to lay his head on the desk and appeared to be sleeping through parts of the meeting.
Wow.
Commissioner Donovan told us that he was aware of the ordinance and the law, but that he personally didn't agree with it, and so would not consider it. And we didn't feel that that was exactly his position to make those decisions. Another commissioner, I think it was Ms. Foster, said that the hearing was like Peyton Place. I believe she based this on the rumors that had been spread in the condominium and actually sent to the Department of Building and Safety in emails to, some nonsense about Mr. Chappendonk wouldn't marry Judy Deutsch, so she was on a personal vendetta. It, as I said, was a lot of nonsense. We all attended that hearing with the expectation that the commissioners there were there to uphold the law and to listen to us. It appeared to most all of us that they had already made up their minds before they came into the meeting how they were going to vote. And so we really were very disappointed.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. I believe that covers all the appellants on record and noted the different units that were taking similar position, and now we'll go to the applicant. My understanding that James Ripking is the representative. We also have Marlon Rubin and David Shapdonk with us as well. Good afternoon, sir.
That is correct.
And give us your name for the record.
Sure. My name is David Chappendon.
My name is Marla Rubin.
And this is James Repke.
Oh.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is David Chappendon, and I'm here with my wife, Marla. We are the applicants for the variance before you today. We have submitted materials which detail the facts of the case. In 2004, when my wife and I had the dreams of building a home together, we hired a licensed architect to design and build our loft. The evidence from LADBS is clear. We obtained all our required permits, we cleared the queue condition, we were approved for a certificate of occupancy, and we never misled anybody. We went through every step with our homeowner association prior to building. We received both board and homeowner approval before construction, and we settled all disputes raised by selected homeowners. In 2004 and again in 2010, after the court ruled in our favor, and the homeowners ordered the HOA board to settle the lawsuit. When the city became involved in 2009, we worked closely with various departments at LADBS to resolve the height issue. LADBS then authorized the granting of a supplemental permit. However, in response to 2 letters from the same homeowner within our building, they decided that we needed to apply for a variance. From then on, our dream of living contentedly in our home has been turned into a nightmare. At the prospect of having the city revoke our permits, we were granted almost 7 years ago. Fortunately for us, the APC commissioners grasped the importance of considering the totality of the circumstances surrounding this case when they made the unanimous 5-0 decision to grant our variance. They recognized that LADBS granted our permits 7 years ago would be the direct cause of hardship we would now face if we had to remove the loft. They also thought that we were willing to respond to neighborhood concerns about nighttime glare when we agreed to install a shade to block all light coming in from the skylight. We hope that you, like the APC, will put yourself in our shoes and consider this case. What would you do if you'd gone through the city process, passed final inspections, and then were asked to demolish an integral part of your home 7 years later? The city and local community should take comfort in knowing this variance cannot be used as precedent. It was issued solely to rectify a permitting problem that, by the city's own admission, was caused by LADBS staff. What happened to us during the permitting process becomes the key unique aspect that no one else will be able to duplicate for any application for construction deviating from the queue condition regulations. In addition, the design and the small size of the construction, the pre-existing stepped raised roof line projection, permitting the height increase of only 27 inches to accommodate the loft, the legal non-conforming status of our building, and the fact that we do not add density to the area, combined into a complete unique configuration of characteristics that would pertain to no one else. In other words, our 27-inch height change will not lead to 27 stories on the Centinela corridor.
We cannot overstate the emotional stress as well as economic and other hardships we have faced and will continue to incur if the variance is not granted. Having already invested $250,000 in the loft, we can't imagine having to spend another $100,000 to remove it and go through yet another permitting process. It has been especially horrifying to contemplate an outcome so drastic and so costly for a project so small in scope. And in addition to affecting us, the demolition and reconstruction would also adversely affect the other residents in the building. We are not asking for special privileges. We are just asking that the city honor the permits and approvals it issued almost 7 years ago. We hope you would want the same if you or your families found themselves in the similar predicament. Before wrapping up, we do want to thank the following people: Sue Chang for her presentation, Mar Vista Community Council members Sharon Comans and Maritza Preskop for not only their mediation efforts, but most importantly, their critical input on the wording to be used in the findings for the Q condition variance. We are also grateful to the many city officials who have assisted us throughout this process in the hopes of achieving an equitable outcome that balances the needs of homeowners who must rely on the accuracy and authority of LADBS with the needs of the community. Finally, we would like to thank Councilman Rosendall's staff for all their mediation efforts as well. In a meeting at his office on October 20th, he had informed us that he had expected to remain neutral and had encouraged us and the Mar Vista Community Council representatives to draft language in the findings that would preclude the use of this variance as precedent. He additionally hoped that a resolution among the parties could be achieved. We certainly worked diligently with the MVCC representatives to accomplish this. Numerous letters in the record and testimony before the APC from neighbors and condo owners attest to support for the variance, but as we are sure you know, attending during work hours is difficult. In conclusion, we believe the APC findings put all the relevant issues in proper context and perspective. We hope that you will uphold the APC decision, or at the very least consider some creative options for resolving this situation. As we have always reached out to work with our neighbors, we remain open to all efforts by city officials to facilitate an amenable solution. In fact, we were very encouraged to see the compromise offer embedded in the supplemental documents submitted by the appellants, requesting a modification to the skylight. We hope our willingness to comply with that request can be a way to achieve resolution. We had also agreed to install that shade as part of the APC findings. Once the appeal went through, obviously all actions became pending, but should that be finalized, we will be installing that. We will be doing that. Thank you again for your attention, and we are available for questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. See no questions? James Repkin.
Good afternoon. My name is James Repking. I represent the Chappendonks. I don't want to reiterate the points I've already made in our papers, but I want to touch on a few important things. Number one, all of the findings required by the municipal code can be met here. If the tortured and complicated history here isn't enough to grant a variance, I don't know what is. The hardships are clear. Through no fault of their own, my clients are threatened with the demolition of a portion of their home, which has been there for 7 years. The law is clear that economic hardships can be considered, but their hardships aren't just economic. As I pointed out in my papers, there's a crucial distinction between using a variance to increase your profits or increase your property value versus protecting a property right that you already have. Again, without this variance, they'll be forced to tear out this portion of their loft, this portion of their home. In terms of special circumstances, here there are physical circumstances related to the configuration of the roof that don't apply to other buildings in the area. More importantly, the big special circumstance here is that the city permitted and inspected the loft multiple times, and this itself is a special circumstance. The law is clear that a special circumstance doesn't have to be physical. Regulations themselves can be a special circumstance where they create a hardship. Courts have also found that where a building permit was revoked because of some issue with the permitting process, that can be a hardship that can otherwise justify a variance. And if you'd like the citations to these are in my papers, but if you'd like the case names, I'm happy to give you those. I think one of the big things that we've heard here today is the issue of precedent. And first of all, as a legal matter, a variance is not precedent. It's considered on a case-by-case basis. And more importantly, as a practical matter, I mean, we've heard things about this is going to lead to multi-story buildings on Centinela, but I can't imagine having a client coming into this body or coming before the APC and saying, this 27-inch variance that was granted under these tortured facts allows me to build a 27-story tower. They'd be laughed out of the room, just as a practical matter. As David had mentioned, we've worked with the Mar Vista Community Council to craft a condition to state that this variance would never be used as precedent for any future projects. We're more than happy to include any other language in the findings. We're happy to do anything else that would protect the Q condition. Lastly, I'd like to point out the Chappendonks have been bounced around between various departments over the last 2 years. We believe that every resident of the city is entitled to have certainty that when they pull a building permit, it can't be revoked 7 years later based on an alleged technicality in the code. We ask that the city stand behind its approval and grant this variance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Thank you so much. We do have more speaker cards on this one, and this will bite to the 2 minutes. So we've heard from the appellants, and we heard from the applicant, and now we'll go into, I'm sorry, ma'am?
Hi, my name is Judy Felton, and I live in the condominium project.
Ms. Felton, if I may, I just wanted to hear from the appellants and from the applicant. Now I'm going to go through the cards. If I call your name, I'll call you up.
Oh.
Okay? No problem. All right. Here we go. So we have with us Christine Rosenzweig. And then we have with us Sharon Cummins, and then we'll have Michael Simmons. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Rosenzweig. I'm a homeowner at 3463 Inglewood Boulevard. And I understand that this issue might at first blush look like small potatoes, but I really would like to emphasize that it's an important part of protecting our community's general plan. They say, that it won't create precedents, and there's really just not enough evidence for that. I wish to cede the rest of my time to the next speaker.
No,
we can't do that?
No.
No problem.
You only give him 2
I support
minutes
the
per
appeal.
person. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Am I speaking into it well enough for you?
You're doing great.
I'm Sharon Cummins, first vice chair, and I added another title by accident last week. I'm acting chair of the Mar Vista Community Council. Please don't ask. It's a long story. Some other time. I want to tell you a little bit about who lives on this corridor, because this is about more than just one building. I went into the census data information and isolated the census tracts on either side of the corridor, and I thought you'd find the results interesting. We have 787 households. Of those, 339 are families. Of those, 142 have children under 18. Now, when we go over to the racial side of things, we have 1,131 people in the white, basically stating they're white, and then 748 Latino, African American, Asian, and other. So I think you can see that this is a very diverse corridor, and there are families living in this corridor, and that is why MVCC is really concerned about precedent with this case. In my capacity working with the Western Regional Alliance, I co-chair the Land Use and Planning Committee there. I have been able to consult some of my colleagues, and I called a couple of land use attorneys, and I was told that, yeah, this is a precedent. This is definitely a precedent-setting case. In terms of our community impact statement, I would point out that we did not grant this loft a free pass. What we said in a very careful statement was we wanted the Q condition positively upheld for the whole corridor. We chose to be proactive on that because the Community Council itself chose to table our initial recommendation from our Plum Committee to turn this variance down. It was a very close vote. It was not unanimous to table, but we felt it left the corridor unprotected without a statement affirming that particular Q condition. That's pretty much what I have to say, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Michael Simmons, Wayne Berkland, and then Joyce Simmons. Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Michael Simmons. I live at 3550 Ocean View Avenue. It's on the east side of Ocean View Avenue, and the house faces west. From the upper floor of my house, you can see this domed light. It may be in a picture here.
I hear you.
This is what I see from the bedroom, master bedroom window. Now, it's my understanding that the variance that's being applied for should have been applied for at the time of construction or before construction. when the planning process was going in. And my understanding that was not done. I mean, we're a country, a state, a city of laws, and the law, to me, was not followed completely. When my wife and I built our house, we were restrained from building above 33 feet, and we kept within that requirement, complying with the law. The other thing I want to mention is that there was no process of the neighborhood being addressed as to this construction going on. Normally, when a construction is about to involve a community, when there's a variance or when there's something unusual, the neighborhood is advised and given an opportunity to address that, to be in favor of it or against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Wayne Brooklyn, then we'll have Joyce Simmons.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. Wayne Brooklyn, 3276 Keyston Drive, Mar Vista. And I'd just like to add, I agree with the other appellant speakers, but despite what David Chapendonk has said about this variance not being a precedent, most all of us believe that if these variances are allowed to stand, it will set a precedence, and other homeowners or builders will try to follow that and increase the height of other buildings above the 33-foot legal limit. So I think, we all know that this will increase traffic density, occupation density, so we believe that you should uphold, accept the, vote against the variance and make these people conform to the law. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Joyce Simmons. And then S.N. Sheffy.
Hi, my name is Joyce Simmons. I live at 3550 Ocean View Avenue, and I would like to say that during the building of my own home, I wanted to have a variance. And the process that I would have had to go through to get a granny unit, because I had 400 square feet too small on the size of the lot to allow for a granny unit, was so cumbersome and so ridiculous that I would have had to notify people on both sides of Centinela, on 3 blocks on the other side of me, and have a hearing, and who knows how much money it would have cost. If I have to go through that kind of a variance process, I feel that other people need to go through that variance process as well. The other thing is, I'm a member of the CERT team, and the CERT team, Community Emergency Response Team, and we are very worried about the size of that glass that is on top of that roof and how it will affect all of us during an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. S.M. Sheffy, I believe. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to say that I support the statement.
Give us your name.
My name is S.N. Shafi. I'm at 12207 Palms Boulevard in Mar Vista.
Thank you, sir.
And I just like to state my position in favor of what Ms. Cummins has already spoken to you about as the representative of the Mar Vista Community Council. I belong to the Hillside Neighbors Association and would like to also add our support that you should uphold the laws. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Robina Royer and then Judy Felton. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Robina Royer. I live at 3619 Keystone, just a few minutes away from this building. And the Chapendonks have spun you a very interesting tale, saying that they are totally innocent at this. And even though they had the direction and were working at every moment under the guidance of a licensed architect and contractor, that they could not see that the building that they were erecting was higher than the parapet. The parapet was right here, and they went above it. The plans that were approved specifically said it had to be no higher than the parapet. They tried to submit plans for approval where it did go higher, and they were told told by LADBS, no, you could not do that. They ignored this and built it the way they wanted, which is exactly what they've done all along. They represented to city officials that in 2004 there were no objections to the loft. You can see in our documentation there are stacks of letters objecting to the loft. There were 2 emergency homeowner meetings objecting to the loft, one of which was recorded that we sent to you. So they are giving everyone a fictional tale here that they have followed every word and letter of the law and it's just some big mistake. That is not true. This has been orchestrated from the beginning, including the fact that David Schapendonk appointed 2 of his friends to the committees, to the CCHOA board so that he would get a 3-2 vote to approve the loft before it was even announced to the rest of the residents. That was an illegal board, and there are letters in the papers that have been submitted outlining all of the many illegalities and procedural irregularities in terms of pushing through this loft. So for them to now say, oh gee, we didn't know, we're so sorry, all these years later it's suddenly coming up, no one ever told us, the parapet was here and they built to here. That, you didn't need a measuring stick to figure that out. You didn't even need to be a licensed architect to figure that out. You just need to have a pair of eyes. These people knew exactly what they were doing.
Thank you, ma'am. Judy Felton? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Judy Felton, and I live at 3544 South Centinela. I'm at Unit 301. And I was on the board at the time that some of the initial proceedings had taken place against the Schapendonks. But through their mediation with our community, everything was agreed upon. Judy Deutsch said, and it's recorded in minutes, she totally accepted everything, the payments they made to our board. I'm representing, actually, the majority of our homeowners. They couldn't be here. We have a very young community. They all work. But in minutes, for example, it says, at the direction of the majority of the homeowners, the association settled the legal matter concerning the loft. The settlement agreement was unanimously approved by the board, and it was supported by a majority of the homeowners. And so we who live there have been bewildered why in 2005 everything stopped, they were settled, everyone was happy, and then suddenly 2 years later action started all over again and rumblings from Ms. Deutsch bringing the issue up. No one in the community ever even raised an issue at all. So we're just a little confused. Why did it become such an issue? We're happy. I walk my dog on all these streets across Centinela, behind Centinela. We go for an hour walk. We never see any light. We never see it. So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, here's the drum roll. Council Rep. Ms. Whitney Blumenfeld. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm the lucky one with the drum roll, correct? Like the neighborhood council, the councilman also wants the Q condition upheld, and in that case, that means supporting the original ZA determination and ruling. Thank you.
Okay. Can you...
What was that?
Okay.
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Sure. So, like the neighborhood council that wants the Q condition upheld, the council member, as a result, that wants to uphold what the neighborhood council wants to do, and that also means upholding the original ZA determination, which upholds the Q condition, and thus it asks to deny the appeal.
So we're talking about
Sorry, deny the variance, not the appeal.
variance.
I tried it succinctly the first time. It was too succinct.
Okay, so grant the appeal, thereby deny the variance from the Q condition, and use the ZA findings that went along the ZA action to deny the variance. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues? Okay. Any motions? What do I think? I think this is a very hard case. That's what I think. It's evident to me that the council office has gone through a lot of discussion on this. Given the dialogue of the presentations, there was reference to mediation discussions over the period of how long this, would you mind coming up? Okay. My impressions are that, given the amount of time you've been in office, this case has probably been going through the process, and your office has been engaging at different stages as it has evolved.
We've engaged mostly within the last 6 to 8 months. We did not engage in the very beginning process part, I should say.
Okay. The notion that the city approved and allowed in error, and then in turn now is being assessed, if you will, today, that there was still development setting aside the error even above what was allowed then. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. And so the action today requires that they go back to what should have been from the beginning.
Correct.
But that is...
What they're saying is that in the very beginning, the height limit, the building was built at 45 feet, is my understanding. Later on, there was a rezoning that brought the height limit for the area down to 33 feet. The building, to my understanding, is around 48.5, 49 feet, loft, I should say. So that is specifically 27 inches.
Gotcha. And so your recommendation is to get it back to where it should have been?
Correct.
Okay. Again, colleagues, I always give a lot of weight to the council if they are engaging the interested parties, and obviously if the recommendation comes from that type of engagement and discussion, it's just very difficult to, it's a difficult case because of that error from the city, and that is a factor there. But given where it was built or how it was built, ultimately it still surpassed the mistake. Correct? No. This is a conversation with the speaker at the microphone and ourselves. So I appreciate your input, but so I just want to make sure I'm framing it accurately. Am I?
Say that one more time.
Okay. That we essentially have a building that was non-conforming because it surpassed the 33 height limit that was imposed in the area. And that the loft in of itself, once it was finished, even surpassed what was allowed.
Correct.
And that's the reason why you want to deny the appeal.
Correct.
Okay, and that's after 6 to 8 months of engaging the interested parties.
Correct.
Okay. Colleagues, any other?
Mr. Chair, is there a representative from Building and Safety here today?
I wish there would be.
I saw Mr. Lara earlier in the room, and I don't see him now. because I'd really like to have a better understanding for how it is that...
We'll make a phone call and see if we can get him here.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, Councilmember? No. No, I understand, but he already spoke. Okay, now the public comment is already closed, so we're at discussion point now. Let's do this. Let's give, because I do believe your question is important for building and safety.
It is, but as long as we have a representative of CD11 here, if I could just ask one other question. Much of the dialogue among the speakers on both sides has been about the precedential effect of this, understandably, because since it's already a non-conforming building, if there's some change to it, I mean, you have to ask what would be the limit of the acceptable change that you could make. And it's understandable that your office, the Neighborhood Council, others would be concerned about whether granting this request would open the door for other, maybe more significant projects than a mere 27-inch addition. Did your office deal with that issue? Did you try to address that issue? And because I know it sounded as though your office was trying to work in a mediating role in this. Did you address that issue of the precedential impact, and how do you feel now about whether or not it might create a precedent for the future? And what steps did you take, if any, to try to prevent this from having a precedential impact?
Sure. That is a challenging question because we have two different parties, one that believes that this is not precedent setting and one that believes this is precedent setting. And in the end, well, let me say that one side believes it's precedent setting because you're going above the Q condition. So it's not just the height limit, but it's a Q condition here. And so anything above and outside this Q condition sets a precedent for going above and beyond it. And that the variance findings could not be made because a lot of the variance findings deal with economic hardship. And to our understanding, economic hardship cannot be used in variance findings. We heard other words from Mr. Repking, but that's the first, to my knowledge, of using economic hardship for a precedent for a variance finding. On the other side, they believe that this is not precedent setting at all, that findings can be made to tailor, and very specifically to tailor to this specific item, this loft. It can't be replicated on this property. However, whether or not it could be replicated on other properties is still a matter of question. And in the end, we had to decide whether or not we believed it was going to be precedent setting or not.
Well, and we would hope that whether on this property or any other, if you take into account the factor that building and safety approved building permits and inspected a property, we certainly hope that that precedent will not reoccur. And so if this is based in part on that finding, then that would in itself limit the application of this to other circumstances where there wasn't a plan approval and a subsequent inspection that both gave the property owner the green light. So if maybe I could direct this to the city attorney to see whether there's
I was trying to lean back in my chair.
I saw you. There's no dodging it. And I don't mean to suggest that you should give a seat of the pants spot legal decision here. But is there any way that in making a finding, like in making an assessment of a case like this, that the precedential impact can be limited to the circumstances of this case?
In terms of precedent, I think the thing to consider is the uniqueness of the circumstances. There obviously, staff says that Building and Safety made a mistake in the issuance of the permits at the beginning. So when we look at cases like this, each property is considered unique. Each history is considered unique. So, and that's why variance findings are rather stringent. They don't normally provide precedent for other properties. You have to look at them on a case-by-case basis. And I would just add that in this case, it does seem a bit of a task for you as decision makers to balance these factors. So I think maybe it would help if you focus on the initial mistake that was made by Building and Safety, and then also I recall that somebody said that there was I don't want to characterize it as an attempt, but there was some assertion that the building plans that the applicant initially submitted, that they said that they would not go above a certain height, but then apparently it did.
Can we ask the staff, do you mind if we ask the staff if they can elaborate on that point? Because I think it's a significant one. Can the staff come up, planning department? So, just to echo what I just heard from the city attorney's office and given your presentation, are there plans that have certain notes that were submitted and other plans that don't? Is that what we're saying?
Okay, I'll give you a little history of the building inspection. According to building inspection information, actually, building inspector inspected the loft in January 2005. As I told you, permit was issued in error in 2004. January 2005, building and safety inspector made a note in the system, in building and safety department system, okay to issue CFO. That was in January 2005. But there is a big gap between January 2005 until 2009. There is no any other activities by same inspector. In year 2009, same inspector tried to inspect this loft. So that's my guessing that during that time, this loft became so controversial in the community and also in the complex that he actually did not issue final CFO officially, and ended up issuing in order to comply when the facts came out that the loft really exceed the building height, which was limited by Q condition. In terms of the notation in the plot plan, plot plan submitted with the building permit application by applicant to building and safety had a notation. I have exact word here. The plot plan had the dimension of the loft, and it even highlighted, it said, parenthesis, no higher than existing parapet. The actual construction of this loft is higher than the parapet.
I'm sorry, what were you just reading from?
The notation made on the plot plan, which the applicant submitted when they applied for building permit, it had a notation on the plot plan. The notation stating that no higher than existing parapet. And it has little highlight.
Okay, is that a notation made by Building and Safety or by the applicant?
I don't know. I asked Building and Safety, the inspection division. They are not sure who made the notation. But according to the handwriting, it looks like the same handwriting written on the plot plan submitted to Building and Safety. Now, actually, the loft is higher than existing parapet. This issue was brought up to Westfield APC when they overturned my determination.
It was or it wasn't?
I did. I brought up this inconsistency to Westfield APC, stating that Building and Safety had the plot plan had a notation which was submitted with the building permit application, but actually the loft was built higher than the existing parapet. Now, Commission stated that even though it had a notation on the plot plan, at the time I told APC, it's very possible and general practice in planning department and building and safety. If people come up with the plans when they apply for building permit, if they see some inconsistencies or inconformance with the code, instead of sending them back to their office and bring it back, if this is something can be fixable and agreeable and can be in compliance, it's very common practice that, we kind of cross out, make a correction on the plans. I'm only guessing that's what it happened. But it looks like a handwriting is the same handwriting written on any other parts on the attached plot plan. So I'm not sure who made the notation. But I also double-checked with the Building and Safety Inspection Division and Plan Check Division. They said that this notation is still valid and they have to comply. You have, I think, a written communication from Building and Safety Inspection Division in your transmitter stating that.
Okay. Do we have any luck with building and safety stuff?
I did give him a call and left a message.
Okay. One option, council members, is if we continue for the 1 week to get building and safety to look at it, to see if they are consistent with, have someone identify that writing. I think what's important here is the sequence of events. Right. Okay, it'll be in 2 weeks. I think what's critical here is if there is an assertion that there were notes made in plot plans and architectural documents that specify limitations, and indeed, in the end, those were either ignored or not addressed for whatever reason. I don't want to make any judgment calls here.
That is correct. That the actual loft was not built according to the plot plan submitted with the
right. But I think building and safety needs to be here to address the question. It's a critical question in terms of how we move forward, because it does speak to the integrity of the process, and that's what we need to make a decision based on the integrity of the process. So colleagues, that we continue, because we have a big item next week on the grocery issue. If you felt comfortable, we continue. Can we continue this 2 weeks? Are we allowed?
You're allowed to do that, but you have to get written consent of the applicant, because I guess the expiration date is 11/23.
Will the applicant give us permission to verify that?
I think that makes good sense, Mr. Chairman, in part because for me, the larger issue is a structural one. Excuse the pun. I mean, it's an issue of governance more than it is whether this particular 27-inch change is permissible or not. To me, I want to understand, why it is that one branch of our government appears to be saying it's okay for somebody to do something when another branch of government says that that's not within the rules. And if that is the case, then we have a problem that we need to address. If it's not the case, it makes this an easier question, I think.
Therein lies the structural.
So I would suggest, I concur with your suggestion of continuing it. Would you want to close public comment at this time?
We would close public comment. I want to make sure it's in writing that the applicant is willing to give us okay, so with the understanding that the applicant will submit in writing our permission to move this forward for 2 weeks, then we'll continue this for 2 weeks. And we should get building and safety personnel here that was involved in this case.
I'm not sure how I can enforce.
Are they still hired?
Mr. Ken Gill was the staff person who was heavily involved.
We'll work it out. So, with the understanding that we have permission from the applicant to continue this 2 weeks, that's what we will do. And we'll answer that important question so that we can move forward.
Can I check the date, plum date, so I can...
Do we have a date, Madam Clerk, in 2 weeks?
29th of Plum.
29th and Plum?
In 2 weeks, the Planning and Land Use Management Committee date would be November 29th.
Okay, then we'll do that. All right, so hold on to your hats. And we'll be back in 2 weeks, and we have a written consent to move this extended 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks, for being here. And you're welcome to take your maps back. All right. Next item, Roberto.
Next item, council members, is an appeal by Jim McQuiston and Lucille Saunders. They're appealing the action of the Central APC, which overturned the zoning and administrator's denial of a variance to operate a retail mattress store not permitted in the MR1 zone in CD5.
Good evening, council members. Maya Zaidsevsky, zoning administrator. As was stated, I originally denied the application to permit a variance to allow the operation of a 10,087 square foot retail mattress store in which the use otherwise not permitted in the MR1-1 zone. The building was occupied from 1991 until October of this year with a wholesale and retail electronics and audio protection supply firm. The firm was there by variance that was granted in 1991 by the Department of City Planning. I held a hearing. There was one person there in opposition, a couple of people there in support. The council office did not take a position at the public hearing on the request. When I went through the findings required to approve the variance, I did feel that I could make the 5 findings that were required. I found that the prior variance was not a precedent for the subject request. I found that the findings submitted by the applicant were inadequate. The use was inconsistent with the City Council's intent of the MR zone and the land use designation, and there were no special circumstances applicable to the project. The property. The property owner then appealed my decision to APC. The Central Area Planning Commission considered testimony both in support of the variance and in opposition. The council office and neighborhood council supported the request, and then 3 people spoke in opposition. The APC determined that I had erred, but by not adequately considering the site's historical retail use, the location on Brea Avenue, which is a commercial corner, I did not give sufficient weight to the size and irregular shape of the property, particularly when compared to lots in the applicable zone that had been tied together to form larger lots, and that I did not consider adequately the surrounding uses in the zone. The Area Planning Commission approved the variance, added 11 conditions of approval, including a term grant that would extend for 10 years. So once the lease ended, if the zone change had not taken place, then they would not be permitted to have another commercial tenant in there without applying for a zone change. If you sustain the decision by the Area Planning Commission, you just need to make the findings for the CEQA and flood map findings that were omitted from the APC's determination. So there's 2 appellants. They wrote really long appeals. I'm going to let them come up here and address their points themselves, and then I'll be available for questioning afterwards.
Did you say really long appeals?
Really long.
Okay. All right. All right, we have 2 appellants here. Ms. Lucille Saunders and Mr. Jim McQuiston. So, would like to come on up?
Thank you. Stephen Jones, 500 South Grand Avenue, 19th floor, Los Angeles. I am here representing Lucille Saunders and the La Brea Willoughby Coalition. We're obviously in favor of our appeal and opposed to the variance. I'm going to be mercifully brief. We are not here today to say that there is no action the city could take that would allow a mattress store at this location. What we are here to say is that a variance is not the way to do it. The variance is simply the wrong vehicle to accomplish to allow the store to operate. Last week I submitted a detailed 6-page letter showing why 4 of the 5 required findings could not be made. I am not going to go through all the details in that letter except simply the last one, which is effectively, is this consistent with the general plan? The general plan designates this property as industrial. The proposed use as a retail mattress store simply is inconsistent with that designation. That should be the end of the story. You can grant a variance from anything in the zoning code, but you cannot grant a variance from the general plan. So the final finding simply cannot be made, and that should be the end. We respectfully request that you grant the appeal and deny the variance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. Lucille Saunders from the Brea Willoughby Coalition. We are a proven, committed, positive, and objective group of advocates for the long-term better interests of our neighborhood and the city. And we've come with our impeccable appeal of this sit and sleep variance. We are supported by our already many submitted documents and are strongly buoyed by the legal and historic platforms which have been substantiated by Mr. Jones, McChristen, and Haynes, and indeed the initial ZA decision. We address the urgent and critical need to protect and preserve the meager industrially zoned areas as supported by the city's industrial land use report and study. We ask not to set precedent to others to pursue zone variances for profits and not to provide special privileges to sit and sleep through spot zoning. We request this appeal to be granted to support the original ZA's findings and to deny the CAPC appeal decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Saunders. Mr. Jim McChristen, also appellant. Good afternoon, sir.
Jim McChristen. My appeal is entirely separate from the appeal of Lucille Saunders. The basis for her appeal is not necessarily the basis for my appeal. I insist that the light is so bad I can hardly see here. I insist that the time allotted for each of the two appeals need not be combined or shared. I also insist on appropriate time for rebuttal after all other testimony is completed. This committee, while adjudicating variance appeals, cannot legislate a decision, but by law, as interpreted by the courts, must obey the restrictive rules in Section 1094.5, California Code of Civil Procedure. That code, as further specified in Section 12.27, Municipal Code, prohibits you from devising a solution different from the zoning administrators or accepting new evidence, however worthy, or utilizing laws not yet in force. You must decide only based on the facts on which the zoning administrator relied and the law presently in force. With these tools, you must only determine if the zoning administrator could have reached her published conclusion. And as long as she could have, you can't overturn it. If the zoning administrator's conclusion is obtainable from her record as a whole, you must affirm it. And that means to grant the appeals. If legally pertinent facts not available at the time of the zoning administrator's decision are brought forth to you, you still cannot reverse the zoning administrator, but you may instead remand the matter to the zoning administrator for review. In other words, it's all dependent on what the zoning administrator says. And as long as she's got basis in fact and law. That's it. That's something that we haven't been doing. Your report must provide the required analytical bridge that the courts require from 1094.5 between the facts and the conclusion. You're bound by Section 12.24W, which does not permit a conditional use in this MR1 zone. That means you can't put conditions on it. It's either yes or no forever, not 10 years, not 5 years, not anything. The CAPC decision unlawfully set forth a conditional use, not a variance. You are bound by Section 65906, California Government Code, 562, City Charter, and 1227, Municipal Code, not to permit a use for the property which is not authorized specifically by its current zoning. Current zoning, Section 17.5, does not permit sales of mattresses to the public on this property. Section 17.5 allows only the Department of Building and Safety to determine if sales of mattresses on this property is a lawful use. That department, in the record, determined that it is not a lawful use. Only if the property is actually rezoned may the sale of mattresses on the property become a legal one. And you cannot rezone in this adjudication. You're acting as administrators, not as legislators. If subsequently the property is rezoned, then the city will have defaulted on its compact with me and all other properties in this zone to keep the zoning uniform in this area as required by California Government Code Section 65852. If the city defaults by unequal protection of law, it will have a liability to properties reaching several billions of dollars, and I don't want that. Associated with this prior process has been the lobbying effort of the council district in which this parcel lies. The California Attorney General, in published opinion number 97-1207, said members of the City Council, not members of the committee, are not allowed to give testimony at a hearing of this committee per Section 54952.2 California Government Code. The reason is that they have a perfect right to give this testimony when the council meets and no one else can speak. You cannot allow testimony by anyone from CD5 to be heard here. CD5 may argue when the matter is before the full council, but your report must consider testimony and briefs presented before you. My appeal paper contains a detailed and correct set of allegations, law, and conclusions which prove that you cannot do anything other than to affirm the zoning administrator's decision dated June 24th, 2011. And of course, your report is affirming it. You're not actually affirming it for the City Council. You cannot permit the CAPC reversal of that decision to stand because, as my appeal paper proves, the CAPC reversal is not lawful. You would be personally in peril not to affirm the zoning administrator's decision because not to do so would be a violation of federal and state law, which the charter and your oath do not permit you to do. Now, I don't want to bring the statue of doom down on you, but this really makes it easy to decide these cases because all you have to do is say, okay, zoning administrator, what did you do? How did you get there? And what's the decision? And what law did you base it on? And if you can't find a hole in that, you say, great, we don't have to go any further. So that's really what I'm telling you. And then the prior case, This really applies to that prior case too. You could decide that very easily on that basis. I'm not trying to reopen that, but I am saying this is the law, and I think we have to obey it.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Doug Haynes.
I wanted to give you this, Attorney General.
Thank you, sir.
Whoops. Did I give you?
Haynes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Doug Haynes. I'll try to follow the lead of Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, if you may not know, was the attorney in Stolman versus the City of LA, so if he's brief, I can't take any more time than he did. I'm going to take it a little bit different approach than what's been said before. I've been in the Motion Picture Writers Guild for 20 years. I'm a member of IATSE. For us to put in a mattress store in industrial zoning is basically saying we're going to lose Hollywood as a place for the film industry. It doesn't make any sense. A variance for this spot doesn't make any sense. Maya Zavesky did a really great job in her findings. When I went to listen to the Area Planning Commission, they talked about jobs. Jobs at a mattress store are basically minimum wage with commission. Our industry has real jobs, $50 to $60 an hour. I've worked in this area for 20 years. We're being bled to death by the loss of affordable industrial land. It's really important to retain that. And in the MR1 zone, there are over 50 permitted uses. You can have a bank, laboratories, office showrooms, dog and cat hospitals, engineering firms, truck repair facilities, publishing firms, and motion picture, television media, and so on. There are all kinds of uses that the owner of this property can look for in a tenant. The buildings right next door are occupied completely, so there's no reason not to seek out something more than just a commercial enterprise that might pay more rent. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Jeff Jacoberger. Are you here? Jeff Jacoberger, grand entrance. All right. As long as you don't slide, we're okay. All right.
Sorry, thank you. Jeff Jacoberger with the Mid-City West Community Council. We support the original application for the variance. Part of the problem we face in this neighborhood is, the Hollywood Community Plan dates from 1988 and doesn't really reflect, the current conditions. It's, as you probably know, it's, in the process of being revised and a new one being adopted, in which this project would actually be allowed as a matter of right. Our neighborhood council wants to make our major streets, including La Brea Avenue, really pedestrian and bicycle-oriented. Right now, this building is a big concrete wall facing the street, basically, with a door in it. This would open, a lot of windows to the street. I mean, a mattress store doesn't necessarily generate a lot of pedestrian activity, but, it's sort of building by building. I think we'd stitch. If you know this area just to the north is the city of West Hollywood's La Brea Gateway, or West Hollywood Gateway with a Target and a Best Buy. Just 3 blocks to the south is the Melrose Corridor. Really building by building, we want to change this neighborhood and make it genuinely pedestrian friendly, and this project would be a part of that. Thank you.
So you represent the Mid-City
West Community
Council,
which is the certified neighborhood council for the area.
And that council is supporting
the application.
The mattress shop.
The mattress shop, yes.
The one that says, "You're killing me, Larry."
What? Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
All right. I had to throw that in there. I couldn't resist. It's been a long day. All right. Next speaker is Andrew Fogg.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, members of the Plum Committee. Andrew Fogg of Cox Castle and Nicholson on behalf of the property owner. And we had Mr. Miller, Larry Miller, actually at the APC. He testified, and I realize a critical mistake in not bringing him today. Just a couple points we'd like to make. One of the issues in this case has been obviously the size of the property. It is not a large site. There are a lot of lots in the area that are very similar in sizes. They're initially mapped, but most of those lots, even on the street, have been aggregated into larger lots, and that's exactly what the community plan supports in terms of industrial uses. This is unique in that it has not been aggregated. It still stands alone in its original size. The former tenant, their lease expired in October 15th, and about 2 years ago they came to the property owner and said, we're having difficulties at the site, and they told the property owner they were going to be leaving. They have left and vacated. They opened a different site. They have a site in the Valley, and they've just recently opened a replacement site in Hollywood that is not on a major thoroughfare. It's a secondary site. It's a smaller site. So their uses weren't consistent. The property owner hired a broker. The broker testified at the ZA hearing. He worked to market this site, look for a tenant that would obviously not need an entitlement, and was not able to locate one. Even after Sit and Sleep came in, they continued to look for a tenant who wouldn't need an entitlement as a backup. No one came forward, and they've been searching continuously even through these proceedings as a fallback, and no one has come forward. So it is not an issue of, hey, Sit and Sleep came in and we just want a mattress store, as much as it is, these are the types of tenants who are interested in this site. The types of tenants that are industrial users are not interested in the site from an access point of view, from a use point of view, from a location point of view, and from a size point of view. So those are some of the issues we wanted to highlight.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you
that.
very much.
And now, Christopher Coons. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello again, Christopher Kuntz on behalf of Council District 5, Paul Koretz. Just to orient you, this project is 50 yards away from the case we discussed hours ago this afternoon, also on La Brea. We are asking you to support the variance and deny the appeal. The Neighborhood Council supported this request, and the Area Planning Commission, after carefully considering the matter, made findings that the zoning administrator had erred, that there was inadequate consideration of the commercial uses on La Brea and the commercial nature of La Brea and the suitability of this site for continued commercial use. And just to frame the issue, that's what we're talking about, a previous commercial use being replaced with a new commercial use. So you heard some reference to loss of industrial land, but I don't really think that's the case here. We're not putting in residential. We're occupying a tenant space with a commercial space. There's a community plan going on that would rezone this to allow commercial uses, but at the moment, it is our most restrictive zone. It's an MR zone, which does not allow commercial uses, and that's why there was a prior variance on the case. La Brea is commercial in nature. It's not heavy industrial in nature by any means, especially when you look to the north at Best Buy and Target. I do take the findings seriously, and I did receive the same letter you received from the appellants. So just a few things I would point out. The practical difficulty in this case is that the retail location here on La Brea, as well as the site, is basically too small and too large. The space itself is too small for an industrial user. The land is not large enough to level the site and build a facility for, be it post-production or otherwise. It simply cannot accommodate today's industrial users, but La Brea is a commercial street and it can accommodate a commercial use. The special circumstances that both the size of the lot, the square of the lot, and then also the comment was made that there aren't other uses, but just to give you two, at 852 La Brea, which is also an MR zone, there's a 99-cent store, which is not a heavy industrial user. At 900 North La Brea, there's a retail and wholesale place called Studio Depot. There's an issue of economic vitality, which is supported in the general plan. And just as a reminder, there's two issues here. There's the general plan and there's the zoning. What's in front of you is a variance for the zoning. It's not inconsistent with the general plan. The general plan designates this for light industrial. This is zoned MR, which is restrictive, but the other corresponding zone in that category is M1, which would allow commercial uses in the zone. It's not at all inconsistent with the designation of industrial, and I'm sure planning staff could give you more information on that. But we think that the findings can be made, they have been made, that the commission made the right decision, and we'd ask that you deny the appeal and uphold that decision.
So when you look at the fundamental notion of the principles of planning, we hear from one party is that we're using a variance to allow for a use. Right. We heard from the staff that they made findings that were essentially APC just decided that we don't agree with you. We want to allow this use. So can I ask the staff to come on up? And if you don't mind staying here, Mr. Coons, I do want to. Given the statements by Mr. Coons in terms of findings, and given your presentation to the commission, they overturned it, and the council wants to continue with the mattress facility there, or retail use in an industrial zone. Given his statements today, just now, do you feel we can put together findings to address their priorities and how they want to see their environment built out?
In the variance findings.
Yeah, and he just mentioned...
Maya Zaitsevsky, for the record. The council office's sort of vision for that block in La Brea versus the individual subject property.
Right. Given the nexus of findings, I mean, that's what we need to do, right?
I think essentially that's what the Area Planning Commission did when they overturned me. They, felt that I was giving too much weight to the property itself and not sort of the surrounding uses. I didn't personally think that was applicable, but if you're the appellate body now, you're acting in the shoes of the Planning Commission. If you think that that's supported by the evidence, then we can do that.
Well, his characterization of the area is what strikes me, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. He spoke to other retail uses, within certain lots. I mean, how many lots around this proposed site? See, I'm trying to understand the direction of the character of the area.
852 La Brea is 1 block away, and 900 North La Brea is on the same block as this property.
Okay, and then the neighboring uses of this proposed site?
So the neighboring uses is the residential project that was approved earlier today, and then there's an auto body place, and then immediate to the north is a commercial shopping center that's anchored by Target and Best Buy.
So it doesn't sound like an industrial corridor.
There are industrial areas very close to here, and it's very important to my boss to preserve those. As you go east of this property and you're not fronting a major street with heavy vehicle traffic, there are film-related businesses, and those are very important to us to preserve. But in the case of these properties directly fronting La Brea, they're not. It's a commercial corridor.
Okay. So I'm going back to the notion of findings, and can we make a case for the recommendations by the council office? Do you feel we can go there? I hate to put you on the spot.
What Christopher was saying and what kind of my issue was okay, the property's located right here on La Brea, and this is the industrial land, the blue zoning. It's east-west. It's not north-south. It goes over many major commercial corridors. So picking and choosing those as the grounds for granting the variance, that it kind of made me nervous that then you're opening up, precedent for other properties to say, oh, well, I would prefer to get a higher rent on a commercial property, a commercial boulevard, so I'm going to ask for a variance for my property, and it was granted on La Brea. If, and the thing that also was troubling to me was that a zone change is permissible under the land use designation. You could either get a zone change to CM or a zone change to M1 to permit the retail use. So if you're inclined to sustain the Area Planning Commission's decision in granting the variance, we have the findings that they wrote. Christopher put some more information on the record about some other uses that are in the neighborhood, but it's up to you to decide whether that's adequate to support the findings. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Colleagues, any questions or observations on this one?
If I could leave you with one final thought, one thing we may want to add to the findings, that the unique circumstance that exists here is a mismatch between the zoning and the uses on the ground. So just on that side of the street, you have a shopping center, then an auto use, a photo studio, the subject site, an office building, a school, and then a residential project. So I think you could make the finding that what's unique about this circumstance is that there's an accumulation of uses that are inconsistent with the zoning, all of those in the MR zone, and that what we're doing is squaring basically that conflict rather than throwing out zoning wholesale.
Well, you need a general plan amendment fast. You need a community plan.
That hearing's on December 8th, so I mean, planning is working on the community plan update, but...
It's on December 8th?
Yeah, but I mean, this property owner has been waiting 10 years for that process to be finished.
Okay, well, let's join the party on that one. Observations, colleagues? Recommendations? Well, again, putting weight on the council. I'm sorry, Mr. Requeston.
I need some time to rebut.
No, sir.
I'm the appellant.
So,
okay.
This committee, we don't do that. We gave you your time as an appellant. We did not limit your time as an appellant.
Yes,
and we
I
leave it at
remember that. And several times you've allowed appellants to rebut. I remember, for example, October 25th.
Sir, this is not an argument. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Christie. All right. I'm having a hard time with this one for the simple reason that we have an analysis from the planning staff where they can show us on the map a color that is basically M1 and it's throughout that whole corridor on that side of the street. Yet on the other hand, from the council office, we're shown that there's a whole range of uses from a school to residential to retail to commercial on that same corridor where it's supposed to be all M1. So the purpose of that zone and its consistency has basically been blown out of the water. It's just not there. And now you have a use that is being supported by the local neighborhood council. It's supported by the council member. And again, given the stakeholders' posture on this, what we see on the map versus what's in reality are two different things. It just, to me, reaffirms the fact that we have to find more funding for planning to get these community plans done and get us out of these tight spots, if you will, given the legal proceedings and consistencies on the maps. But I would go on the edge here and support the council office and what is the directive? Should we support you, Mr. Coons? What are you asking for? Deny the appeal?
You would need to deny the appeal and make the additional finding about the flood map that staff advised you, asked you.
And that would be extent of it, Roberto?
You would deny the appeal, and I believe that revised findings would be submitted as part of the file.
Okay, with additional information provided.
Right. And also include the findings of the central APC.
Right. Okay. Think a little bit. Colleagues, you have a second on that one? Okay. I'll be the action of this committee. Next, Roberto. Home stretch, guys. This is the last one. Suck it up. we can do this.
The last item, council members, are appeals by the LA International Golf Club and the California Department of Fish and Game. This has to do with a decision of the Director of Planning to modify conditions 25 and 28 relative to the postponement of construction of trails for the golf club, and to modify also the water quality monitoring program in CD2.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Am I close enough? Good afternoon, council members. I'm David Weintraub from the City Planning Department. I had conducted the hearing, which is the subject of this appeal, before you now. I want to keep it brief. It's been a long afternoon, so I think what I'll do is give you some very brief comments and then stand ready for any questions you want to clarify. Okay? What you have before you today is basically two separate appeals of a plan approval that was granted, which modified two conditions on a conditional use to allow a golf course in the Tujunga Wash. The major source of the appeals had to do with some acreage that was to be set aside as a preserve, and it hadn't been. So it had to be maintained along a long course of time. But that major issue for the community, the appellants rather, was, I believe, resolved finally very recently. The owner of the golf course has entered into a transfer agreement with the MRCA to transfer the preserve over to them. It's my understanding that one of the appellants has gone on record along the path of this project as recommending and acknowledging that would be a very beneficial transfer. So with that, I have personally seen copies of the documents, the transfer agreement, though it led to an escrow, which I understand will be very short, perhaps as short as a week. But at this point, it hasn't actually been recorded yet. So with that, based on the evidence that I had seen at my hearing and all of the additional material, including this transfer agreement, I would recommend, staff would recommend the denial of both appeals and sustain the original action approving the plan approval. Lastly, before I do go, I just want to make a comment that the city attorney did give me some advice that if that's the path we're going to go, I'll need to read a CEQA finding back into the record. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that presentation and your compassion with your brevity. Mr. Stimmack.
I've always been a compassionate man.
Mr. Stimmack.
For the record, I'm Tom Stemnock with Planning Associates, 404 Vineland Avenue, Suite 108, Studio City, California, 91604. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed the afternoon with you. I remember now why I'll never want to run for consul. I really appreciate your time and your effort. The bottom line on this is that we've completed all the conditions. Fish and Game had filed an appeal. California Department of Fish and Game had filed an appeal challenging several of the conditions, the determinations whether they had been satisfied or not. At this point, we clearly have satisfied all the conditions, and the final one was the donation and the transfer of 277 acres to the Mountain Conservancy recreation area. And those documents have been executed. They'll be recorded in a matter of days. So at this point, you can grant the appeals in part, or you can deny all appeals, and I think the net result is the same.
Okay, so maybe we should have you first. Mr. Stemmack, so you represent the Angeles National Golf Club?
Yes. We're the owner and developer.
Owner and developer, and all the issues that were before us been taken care of because of the transaction that will be consummated in the next few days.
Yes.
And so, what is your recommendation?
The councilman may want to make some minor adjustments, but in my mind, you could deny all the appeals, and that will resolve all the issues in my mind.
Councilmember?
If that works for you, Mr. Stemnock, that works for me. I do need to... Thank you. I do need to say, Mr. Chair, since you started this by saying we're in the home stretch, what we're doing today with this matter is getting to the finish line in a marathon that started 15 years ago under Joel Wax. And the Angeles National Golf Course is one of... Mr. Rizzo was just there the other day, as a matter of fact. This is one of the the gems of Los Angeles. It's one of the most beautiful parts of my district. It's a place that everyone should come and visit when you have the opportunity. And it's going to become, it has been a major asset to our community, and it will be even more so with the consummation of this final condition, the transferring of 277 acres for preservation of open space, the completion of these trails, the $250,000 that the golf course is contributing to the as an equestrian mitigation fee, which has been fulfilled. I just want to take a moment to thank planning staff, Mr. Weintraub, my own staff, Carl Trosian, and all of the many staff people over the course of several council members who have worked to get us to this point. And then, of course, the golf course, our community activists, and the MRCA for really making a significant contribution to this part of Los Angeles and for making this happen. So, Mr. Stemnock, if the one proviso I was going to suggest is, pursuant to, I think, discussions that we've had, is that we put a 3-month window on the completion of the escrow and the transfer, and that if it's not completed within the 3 months, that there be a requirement for plan approval.
Yes. We expect the documents all to be finalized and recorded within the next week or two, but I think that's a good idea. We're coming up on the holidays as well.
If you're good with a 3-month window, I think that would...
I would have no problem with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, I do recall this going through this with Councilmember Gruhl, and I think Councilor Padilla had a little hand in there somewhere, and...
we thought about a Home Depot, but I guess
we would still be hearing this. Okay. Councilmember.
Yes, I enjoyed the golf course on Friday. Beautiful course, but that in no way influences my decision today. That's based solely on the facts. My decisions today are based solely on the facts.
It was for a charity event, and I want to thank Mr. Weezer for coming out to the 2nd Council District to support the charity.
Wow, that's cool. So let me know when there's another charity event. It is not going to influence my decision either. But that being said, we should move on this. And what do you recommend? Mr. Burbidge?
I believe it's a denial of the appeals, Council.
I think I need to get this on the record before you act.
Please.
It's a secret finding. On April 28, 1998, the City Council certified the final Environmental Impact Report, EIR number 95-0286, CUC, CUB, and a vacation. State Clearinghouse number 95051004, adopted the California Environmental Quality Act findings and Statement of Overriding Considerations attached as the environmental findings and the Statement of Overriding Considerations at that time, approved the mitigation measures as proposed in the final EIR, and adopted the mitigation monitoring program attached as the monitoring program. No additional CEQA clearance is required at this time because neither the project nor the circumstances surrounding it have changed such that the provisions of state CEQA guidelines, section 15162, would require an additional environmental review. Thank you.
Okay, so that's been entered to the record. That's what we recorded. Decision's been made, and the appeals are denied. All right. That being said,
public
congratulations, Councilmember. Anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.